Welcome back to the KDPG Sunday Edition. We're marking 6 months since the Tree of Life Synagogue shooting massacre and the rise in anti-Semitism, hate crimes, and mass shootings at houses of worship of other religions. 1 week ago, a shooting attack on Saturday morning. Sabbath worshipers near San Diego took the life of a woman and wounded several other people, including their rabbi. And last Sunday, people gathered here in Squirrel Hill to plead for an end to the violence. Bob Allen was there.
Surreal that we have to relive this again and again and again for our friends that we reach out to in Southern California.
The event at Temple Sinai was held to commemorate the 6-month anniversary of the Tree of Life massacre. But it took on even more meaning because of the shooting at a synagogue outside of San Diego.
It makes it more important, our work more important. Our work is more poignant to say we must continue to fight to reduce gun violence.
A host of speakers denounced gun violence, including Daniel Leger, a survivor of the Tree of Life shooting.
We shouldn't have to be here because of Pittsburgh, because it was more than enough. We shouldn't have to be here because of power yesterday, because it was way, way more than enough.
I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside.
The event ended with a march through Squirrel Hill to Schenley Park. They carried signs and sang songs calling for an end to the violence. When they reached the park, a tree was planted.
Our community is resilient and our community chooses life, and we will choose to move forward and to make some good come of what was a horrendous tragedy.
Bob Allen, KDKA News.
And back with us are Rabbi Jeffrey Myers from Tree of Life Congregation and Reverend Eric Manning of Charleston, South Carolina's Emmanuel AME Church, site of a mass shooting in 2015. I'd like to ask you both to explain the rise in hate crimes and anti-Semitism that we've seen. Rabbi, let me start with you.
I don't see a rise. I just see the 24/7 news cycle means we all know more about anti-Semitism.
You've seen the stats, though, from ADL, Southern Poverty Law, that say there has been a rise in the last several years.
I agree that we've seen a rise, but I also think that there's just more reporting on it, and people know more about these sort of acts. But yes.
So you don't sense that a climate has changed? You don't sense there's been a mainstreaming of what had been perhaps fringe ideas?
Oh, no, I do.
You do?
I do see that.
But you don't see that necessarily translating into the kind of acts that we saw tragically in Squirrel Hill and in Charleston and in Christchurch, New Zealand, and Poway and on and on?
I do see that there's an increase in all acts of violence, particularly white supremacy. To me, I think that's one of the most troubling issues, I think, facing our country, quite frankly.
Then let me zero in on that. Explain the rise in white supremacy.
I don't know if I'm really the best sort of authority person to speak about that, but in times of challenge and trouble, people won't look inwardly to see what is the cause of my problem. They'll find external reasons for their problems, and they'll turn into minority groups and foist blame upon them in lieu of saying, gee, maybe there's something I personally am doing wrong.
Scapegoating.
Precisely.
To what extent are these social media sites where people of like mind gather and conspire and swap conspiracy theories to blame for this surge of white supremacy?
I think in the case of white supremacy, because there's no leadership, because we think of them as all as lone wolves. They are to that extent, but with all of these sites that are available, they can resource there and create their own networks, whether it's the dark web or these open sites that anyone can attach themselves to and find guidance and encouragement. I mean, how many people who have committed crimes have spoken of a predecessor who they look up to as a hero who committed a heinous crime before them? So it's become like a trophy room.
And what should be done about these sites?
Worthy of a Pittsburgh Forum of First Amendment rights versus life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Just this week, Facebook banned Minister Louis Farrakhan. They banned Alex Jones from the InfoWars site. So social media sites have been criticized for allowing things to live and fester, but there seems to be renewed attention to it. Although, I got to tell you this, in Friday's Washington Post, headline says, his Instagram posts pledged to execute Jews and Trump's family. Authorities took 6 weeks to arrest him. When they finally went to his home, they found firearm magazines, a gas mask, a Nazi flag, and a framed portrait of Hitler, among other combat equipment and anti-Semitic material. Do you sense that the response from society, so government, from these tech giants, Reverend, let me ask you, do you sense that the response is equal to the danger that perhaps you detect that's out there in the culture?
I think the response should actually be, could possibly be a lot better. Before I've made comments that leadership makes a difference, right? If you see leadership using hateful speech, hateful words, as Rabbi has already said, your words matter, and they have a downstream effect. And it starts at the top, right? So if the highest office in the land begins to use words that heal as opposed to words that divide, if then others begin to say, as opposed to saying this, I'll find a better way of saying something that could actually help or possibly even heal. From the tech giants, from the Facebooks, from the Twitters, from all of the other aspects of social media, they too will have to be involved. And it's one thing, as someone shared with me before, they said, well, Pastor, you just spoke about words of negative rhetoric that was used on this side. You also now must speak about negative words that are used on this side as well. And I said, you're absolutely correct. Both sides have to begin to tone it down and learn how to utilize words that could help heal and bring communities together. Yes, we have differences of opinion, but we can find other ways of communicating, ways that are not so heinous and hurtful, but ways of healing and restoration. And I think when we can find that, when we can begin that, granted, it's not easy. It's going to take some time. It's going to realistically say, I need to rephrase or retrain how I'm going to respond. And as I do such, then I can bring healing, hopefully, to others. And again, now we cannot be in all aspects, in all places. Everyone has access to the internet. People can tweet, people can set up their own websites to utilize or to draw examples of hateful crimes and hateful ways of hurting people. But what we must do, those who know better, must find creative ways to say to them, let's take a step back. Let's figure out how we can love one another, how we could be a part of a community, how we can help each other. And again, it's easier said than done, but it's something that we definitely must do some hard work.
We just have a couple of minutes left. Rabbi, I'm curious, you said this has in some ways deepened your faith. Mm-hmm. Would you say that the grief experienced in Charleston has deepened the faith of your congregation? And do you think that you're speaking for your congregation as well as yourself? Do you think many people would say that? Because you could not blame people for saying this has shaken their faith.
I would say that people are all over the place when it comes to their coping skills and how they're healing. It's as though if I could create a frame with 100 slots, I could probably populate each slot with people in my congregation. There are some who have been emboldened, who are taking positive steps towards healing and are working and doing wondrously good things. There are people who still struggle, and we find, I think, all of those places literally simultaneously.
Reverend, about 30 seconds to give you the last word on that.
Sure.
Your experience has been what?
Again, everyone is in their different space. Everyone is in processing it differently. While I would love to be able to say that everyone at Mother Emanuel has begun their journey and has completed their journey. It's still a process. And what we must do is continue to be patient and wait for everyone to get to either A, where we are, B, where we would like them to be, or C, if they don't get there, going back to your question earlier, if they don't get there, then we still must continue to embrace them and encourage them.
And very quickly before we go, what's on the agenda while you're visiting Pittsburgh this weekend?
The agenda is we're pretty much open. We are looking forward to spending some time with Rabbi and the Tree of Life Synagogue members today and this evening, and then of course tomorrow as well in the worship service.
Excellent. If I didn't say it earlier, welcome to Pittsburgh.
Thank you.
Safe journey home. All right, we'll take a break. Back with some final thoughts in just a moment. All right, once again, our great thanks to Reverend Eric Manning from Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, and Rabbi Jeffrey Myers from Tree of Life here in Pittsburgh. You can watch the KDPG Sunday edition each Sunday morning at 11:30, right after Face the Nation. For Joe Smido, I'm Ken Rice. Thanks for being with us, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. So long.